Have you ever heard someone speak and by the end of it, you're super motivated, you're excited, and you want to do what they're exhorting or challenging you to do? I want to give you today 3 rhetorical tools that you could use that will make your public speaking way better. Hi, who am I? I'm a criminal lawyer, style attorney. I practice in London, Ontario. I regularly address the court and address juries. And public speaking is something that's really near and dear to me. I like watching speeches. And over the years, I've learned a few tips and tricks that I want to share with you. So the first thing that I want to share with you is antithesis. What is antithesis? Well, antithesis, it's the opposite of a thesis. It's the opposite of something. And if you look at a lot of great speeches, it's the employment of what is more simply said, just contrast. Okay. So for an example, if you look at Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, I Have a Dream speech, he talks about the Negro living on a lonely island, which is one point, while surrounded by a sea or an ocean of material prosperity. When you use illustrations like that, there's a strong contrast where you hear, wow, this is one idea, and then it is contrasted with another idea. It's something that helps you remember what the speaker is saying, and it also allows you to see just the difference. It often has an emotional response because you're on a lonely island, and then you're surrounded by a sea of material prosperity. That's one classic example that was used by Martin Luther King Jr. Another rhetorical tool that you could use is that of anaphora. And again, who used it? Martin Luther King Jr. in his I Have a Dream speech. I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream. Saying something over and over and over, starting your sentences with the same thing. And that's the most recognizable use of that. But Martin Luther King Jr. also uses it when he says, now is the time. Now is the time. Now is the time. The repetition of something over and over, it inspires and it motivates people to action. It motivates people to changing their convictions, to considering things, anything like that. And then the third piece, or the third rhetorical tool that I think is quite amazing, is tension. See, I just paused there. That's tension. You're like, okay, is he going to tell us about tension? What's going to go on next? When you start off a speech with imagine, or have you ever, or today I want to talk to you about something that's mysterious and mystical, you got your audience on the edge of their seats because they're like, you're going to tell me something? What is it? Tell me, tell me. Frequently, when I address juries, I start off by saying, I want to share a story with you today. And that story takes place in Boston, Massachusetts in 1773 at a time of heightened tensions between the British and what would later become known as the Americans. And people are like, okay, I want to hear this story. And then I go on and say it was Boston, Massachusetts with cobblestone streets. And there was a group of soldiers that were surrounded by an angry mob, and they got spooked. And they fired upon the mob, killing 5, wounding 7, in what later became known the Boston Massacre. And this is a jury trial. This could be a jury trial for anything. It could be for murder. It could be for sexual assault. It could be for anything. The audience is sitting there thinking, how does this relate to the guilt or innocence of this man? I'll tell you. You want to know? So I say, those soldiers retained a young lawyer by the name of John Adams, who would later go on to be the president of the United States. And in his defense of the soldiers, he said something that is as true now as it was back then. At which point I've totally engaged the jury and I have their audience because they want to hear this significant truth, right? They want to hear this quote by the former president of the United States. That's another tool you could use, appealing to authority, right? They're not my words. Who cares about me? I'm a no-name lawyer. But when I say the words of the former president of the United States, people are like, yeah, let's listen to what John Adams said. He knows a thing or two. And the jury is on the edge of their seat at this point, and they want to hear that thing. Then I quote, I say, he said this. It is more important that innocence be protected than it is that guilt be punished. For guilt and crimes are so frequent in this world that all of them cannot be punished. But when innocence itself is brought to the bar and condemned to death, then I pause just a little bit, because you want to create tension. You want to exploit that. The subject will exclaim, it is immaterial to me whether I behave well or ill, for virtue itself is no security, and if such a sentiment as that were to take hold in the mind of the individual, that would be the end of all security whatsoever. And then I tie it into my whole shtick, and hopefully they come back and they give my client a not guilty verdict. So tying it all together, 3 rhetorical devices you could use. The first one is antithesis, compare things, right? This is not a circus, it is a courthouse. It's a place of reverence. This is not a university. This is a place where we engage in debauchery. Actually, that's probably a university, but this is a place of, this is not a place of learning. This is a place of play. This is not a instance for violence and recklessness. It's an instance for seriousness. This is not something that offers comforts. This is something that is harsh and will turn you into strong men, right? When you use contrast, it's a lot stronger because you say not only what it's not, but you use that in the background of what it is. So use contrast, antithesis, use anaphora, right? So when you repeatedly use a rhetorical device, you could combine 2 rhetorical devices. So for an example, if I use contrast over and over and over, I'm actually employing contrast with anaphora. And then, of course, the very last piece is tension. Build them up. It's like a scary horror movie when someone's about to jump out of the bushes or the closet or whatever and do something crazy. You're on the edge of your seat because you want to see what happens. Will our hero survive? So try those next time you're called to give a speech. If you have any questions or if you want any other tips on public speaking, I'd love to give it. And let me know if you've ever used these rhetorical devices. Thanks for watching.